I think it's down to, it doesn't come into how much money you've got. It's being practical.
Well, I mean, good tailoring, of course, has the longevity, but there should be also, in many ways, a degree of versatility to it.
For sure.
We worked it out once, how it was cheaper to have a bespoke suit over 5 years than it is to buy suits that he was buying from Marks and Spencer's at the time.
Perfectly true. That I love a suit, obviously, but you know, to wear a nice sports coat in the week, and a pair of trousers or a blazer, which was never done at Terry's age and mine. You know, I turned
certainly
up
not in London.
I turned up in a blazer on one Friday, and they sent me home.
This, I mean, this jacket, this coat goes back, oh God, yeah, many, many years.
Terry.
Hello, Kirby, lovely to see you.
It's so great to see you again. Thank you so much for having me in. It's so nice to be back in London.
Good to see you. Long
John,
time no see.
Of course, pleasure. So it's so great to finally be able to, come in here and film a little bit for the YouTube channel. I've got, 3 good friends, of course, Nick Fowkes, Tom Chamberlain, and then another former U.S. congressman from the United States. And they've all got 2 things in common. One, they're all exceptionally well dressed. But second, you're their tailor.
They come here.
Yes. I mean, of course, I've spent a lot of time up and down the row, and I think, you two in particular, your reputations precede you as just, being exceptionally talented and really well respected, even amongst the tailors, which I think in this particular industry might be one of the better compliments.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Terry and John, I was thinking maybe you could give a little bit of a background, for the viewers of kind of how you got started in this and how you got to where we are now.
Okay, yeah, it's a funny story, really. I always wanted to be a tailor. From the word go, it was never any issues. Really? I wanted to be a tailor. Lucky enough, my parents saw an article in the newspaper, and I ended up at Anson & Shepherd's, where I worked for a year.
Okay.
Then went to a company called Chapman, who's not around anymore. And then literally from 50 yards from where we are now onto Denman and Goddard when they were on Sackville Street.
Okay.
Just after I got married, I was made redundant, literally the week we got back. And that's where I hooked up with John, one of the cloth merchants, which was now part of Scabell. It was called Collard Parsons. Had got me an interview with Hawes and Curtis, who was with Teddy Watson at the time. And then John and I have just been friends ever since. And we sort of went our own ways. And I went to Tommy Nutter and then Huntsman, and then went on my own. And then John and myself teamed up again.
Yeah. How long have you guys been together here?
It's Sorry, Terry, it's a funny story. Terry, I was running sort of Hawes and Curtis, the old Hawes and Curtis, not the shirt guy. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Terry came in, but sounds corny, but had it from the word go. I knew he'd be bang on.
Yeah.
And it was many years ago. What was it, Terry? I can't remember.
76.
76.
Really? Just a few years ago.
I moved to where John lives. I moved just around the corner from him.
Really?
He moved since, but it was really a weird story that, we started sort of together and then, please God, ended together. So it's quite a journey. But the great thing with Terry and I is that we cut very similar. He's slightly snappier than me, if you like, and experience in as much as he's been around to the top notch, and I've started actually not here anymore, they're all closed unfortunately, because they were old shops anyway. And you've got I don't know, what have they got, 100 years of experience?
Yeah.
Between us, more than me.
Yeah. Sorry
more on my side.
Well, I'm 50 years.
Oh, more,
60.
yeah, maybe it must, which is great. So, we can cut anything from frock coats.
Yeah.
I used to work for an ecclesiastical. I can cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah, frock coat, cassock, bands.
So you can do my surplus and my cassock.
Exactly. And whether you'd have anybody to make it now, who knows? But it's a great thing that you have got that experience. So there really isn't anything we can't cut.
Yeah.
And between us can't fathom out, which is lovely to have a backup either way, I think.
Well, and I think that you guys, really personify the old school kind of in British
We've become
tailoring.
that, haven't we?
Yeah, well, but I think now there's a certain virtue to that, in that, you've got all these new people, that are popping up, but to have someone that's really kind of anchored and grounded in the tradition of bespoke tailoring, is increasingly rare.
The great thing is, Terry, sorry, cutting in, I seem to be, but I'm old school. I can cut most things, but he takes things off and comes off. It kind of worries me. I could get there in the end, but he kind of experiments a bit more. So we're maybe old school, but we can be anything you like, if you know what I mean.
Well, that's the beauty of bespoke tailoring. So, John, of course, I mean, you were the tailor to the late Duke of Edinburgh for much of his life, weren't you?
Quite a long time, many years.
When did you guys start together?
I started taking over from the boss of Hawes and Curtis. I used to go with him as, if you like, the trouser cutter, and then when he retired, I took the whole lot over. But oh golly, 65, I think.
Really? Well, he's known for being exceptionally well dressed, and here's the man
simple,
behind it.
Very classic.
Very English, though.
Very English, but very correct, and a really lovely guy to work for, to be honest, a good boss, because he was called the boss, and he really
that's right.
was the boss.
He was the boss. Well, I remember a few years ago, I was here, and there were a whole bunch of trousers, laid out on the tables, and you were kind of doing some mending and some alterations.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we do all day long, isn't it, Terry?
Well, seems to be.
With our suits, as indeed you look marvellously turned out, and your tailor there, he probably does the same. It's a part of the act. You can't say, we only make, we don't repair, or we don't take on other people's coats that they may have had made that they perhaps weren't satisfied with. We're tailors. We do anything regarding tailoring. We're not that way inclined. So
yeah, I mean, of course, that is really a hallmark of bespoke tailoring, is that durability and longevity to the garment. I mean, of course, it's expensive, right, because of all the work that goes in to the garment itself. But if you really were to think about the yield that a well-made bespoke suit can produce over its lifetime, I mean, you're probably paying less, over the lifetime of the garment than you are for cheap clothing that in 2 years is either going to be unfashionable or that you're going to have to throw away.
We worked it out once when we had this many years ago when we was at Hawes and Curtis. Someone come in and said, "Oh, you're so expensive, you're so expensive." And I sat down and worked it out with him how it was cheaper to have a bespoke suit over 5 years than it is to buy suits that he was buying from Marks and Spencer's at the time.
Perfectly true.
Yeah, we still get it now. People bring ready-to-wears in, and they say, there's nothing you can do with them. They're finished.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have the added benefit of, again, being located just off of the row. So, you don't have those high rents really factored in to the price. And so, it's a very, reasonable.
Competitive.
Really competitive. But it's really, almost surprisingly so, given the quality and given the expertise that you guys do bring. It's like, difference. Not to encourage you to raise prices. I don't want to be responsible for that, but,
I think what it is, Terry and I sit
prices
down.
Are going up. So
yep, that's right, starting with me.
Terry and I sit down, and we feel what we would like to pay for a suit if we wasn't in the tailoring profession, and that's where we've arrived at the prices. I think we're competitive. We're not giving them away, but when you hear some of these inflated
you're not fleecing people either.
Well, that's inflated prices that you hear around not necessarily this town. You hear it from some ready-made houses. Ready-made, or whatever is it called, ready-made? I always get it wrong. Semi-bespoke or whatever. Yeah. Some of the prices are much more than us, and it's like I kind of find that a bit too much, really.
Well, I think that one of the things that, again, a good friend of mine that is one of your clients was saying is that you really want to see your clients in the clothing, right? And so they can have two suits for the price of what one would otherwise be. I mean, you guys are really committed to the cloth and to the clothing, and I think that shows.
We insist. Terry's terrific. I kind of didn't accept it at first because some cloths you have to cut one way and some you don't. But we cut all our cloths. Everything's cut one way regardless. So there's no
levels.
Discrepancy in, is this kind of shading a bit? So, and we feel it costs more to buy it that way, but that's the way it should be. If you're going to do something correctly, do it correctly, so to speak.
Yeah. Would you say that each of you kind of have a house style at this point that you've kind of settled on, or?
Well, it's weird, really, because I don't think we really thought we actually had a house style, did we? But everybody keeps saying, "Oh, I want your house style," and then when you work out, yes, we do have a house style. It's I spent a lot of time with Huntsman and Tommy Nutter, so obviously Tommy Nutter has very, very square shoulders, and Huntsman are softer. So we're somewhere in the middle of the two.
Yeah.
We do like a shape, but we don't like that real wasp waist shape, what some of the tailors get, so where it really flares out. So our style is to sort of more hug the body through here, but have quite a bit of shaping, and a slightly bigger chest than on the Huntsman coats, but
so still quite flattering.
Slim.
Yes. Looking at your suit, which you look well turned out.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Well that's the drape you've got on that would be kind of around our era, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be pretty similar to that actually. Our
so
drape.
you have a little bit. Because, it's okay if you said, I don't put anything in the pocket, I never carry a pen, I don't want to lift my arm, we can do anything you like. But basically, most people carry a phone, if not two. So a little weeny bit of drape we cut, we're not excess. And that's where we are very similar. Terry cuts, when we get a young guy in, of which I make for as well, but he's that, and they want to excel. That real no room in it. He's your man. I kind of get mine a little bit fuller.
Well, I think, with age comes wisdom. And, the older I've become, there's a few things that have certainly changed with my suits. I mean, one, a little bit more room to grow into, but not too much, not making them look baggy.
As I say, that to me is
epitome
of a fantastic suit.
That's very good, isn't it? Ours would be a bit
probably
square shoulders. I'm just saying that. We had someone came in this morning, picked his jacket up, it was a tweed jacket, and he wanted basically like to wear it as like a cardigan type jacket, and his shoulders, they were so sloping.
Look good though. Well, not for you. You're not keen.
I didn't like it, but John loves it.
Shouldered, it got it absolutely spot on. It was.
It did look.
It was him.
No
excess padding, no lifting up.
There was no padding at all in the shoulders.
Did he wear it out?
Padding.
No, he took it. But
he took it with him. No padding in the jacket at all. Just a very thin canvas through it. Full facing inside, no lining.
Having said that,
we just put lining in the sleeves.
There was no surplus here.
A
lot of people interpret when they make it soft. Well, you have to have that. He got it absolutely.
It didn't collapse at all.
There wasn't any surplus at all. It was great.
And of course you cut a lot of double-breasteds for Tom Chamberlain and then my other American friend. I mean, your double-breasted suits are brilliant. Is that, something that you're drawn towards, or?
We do a lot. No, it's funny. It's only the last few years everybody started wearing double-breasted again. Nobody was wearing it up to about 3 years ago.
Pretty smart looking, I must say.
The problem is people don't like, because you have to keep them buttoned up all the time. But once you get used to keep them buttoned up, they look terrific. Leave them undone, they look a bit sloppy. So we tend to cut them with a smaller wrap now, like yours is a smaller wrap, same as ours, a smaller wrap, slightly lower buttoning, so you open the shirt more so you can see more of the tie. And with less chest. Because you've got enough in it without adding more chest into it.
Well, it's a beautiful piece. And I think that if I were to have anything made, that probably is where I would start. It's absolutely.
You look great with a turn-back cuff on there. You've got that style.
He
doesn't like them. I love them.
I don't like turn-back cuffs. John loves turn-back cuffs.
I'm a turn-back man.
We argue all the time.
Was there any? What's the kind of the historical reference of the turn-back?
I'd be a liar to say it probably comes from, what would you think, from a Victorian era?
Yeah, it's
when they had slips on their waistcoats, rather than they were quite flamboyant, where they had braid and it came up and then rotated round there. And then somebody, I would have thought it's from the Victorian era, but I'm not sure about that. I'm going to try and find out. We'll have to find out.
And of course, one of the hallmarks of bespoke tailoring is the durability and the longevity of it. And I often say that the handwork doesn't exist for the sake of handwork. The handwork really exists in order to give the garment integrity, and that integrity is to allow it to last a long time.
Quite right.
Yeah, it's quite weird really, because we fit in one on the other day, and the guy said, "How much of this stitching stays in it? All the white stitching, all the basting stitch comes out." So you actually see more work going into a garment when it's being made than the end result.
You don't see any of it.
You don't see any of the work at all.
But
it's a bit like I sort of relay it to scaffolding on a house. That scaffolding goes up to keep it in place. And it's the same we work. It's the same way with all the basting cottons.
Absolutely. When I ran Hawes and Curtis, the original, for a few years, I started then around about 65, and this Sir came in, of which I won't mention any more than that, And he came in and said, "Can I speak to Kent?" So I came to the front shop and he said, "I would have, quite annoyed actually." I said, "What's that, sir?" He said, "A button's come off my jacket." "Oh," I said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "We'll put that on right." "Well, yeah, that's not the point. It came off." I said, "Well, I apologise." And I thought, this is rather strange. I hadn't made for him for quite a few years because he was already getting on a bit, like myself. And so he took the jacket off, and I looked in, bearing in mind this was 1966 or something, I can't remember. And I looked in the label, and it was 1938. So he was upset because his button came off, which I think is great in a funny sort of way.
Yeah, that's funny. It's like taking a pair of shoes back to the shoemaker and saying, they've lost the polish. It's like they've lost the shine.
Yeah, when did you make them? About 50 years ago. But that was a true story.
Yeah.
Nice old boy though, very elegant. Whoa, I didn't argue with him. He was so elegant.
Yeah.
As you are.
Yeah.
Another plug.
Well, you're too kind. Well, I'm looking kind of past you at this busy workroom here, and I mean, if you wouldn't mind, it'd be an honor to kind of have you show us some of the boards.
Please do.
Yeah.
Pop in, we can look in.
We're in your hands, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
After you tell you go.
One of the things that really fascinates me about this firm is just the incredible perspective in history that you guys have, having been in the trade for so long. And so I guess one of my questions is have you seen much change in Savile Row over the years?
Huge change, especially in the last...
Because that's the change, my legs are gone.
Yeah, his legs are gone.
Like that one?
I've got a new knee. Especially in the last 5 years. It's just, and even as recently in the last 2 years, it's all become... I think it's probably due to the internet, but people actually bring in and they're quite specific with their designs now, especially with the turn-back cuffs and half belts and patches on pockets. And we've got a jacket there for somebody, tweed shooting jacket. He didn't like the pockets, the type of patch pockets, so we had to change that. Well, years ago, people would have just come in and say, "I want a plain blue suit, a plain grey suit."
Well, I think it's like going to a doctor and telling him what type of medicine you need. It's really
it's gone
it should
like
be
that,
the other way
really.
around.
Yeah.
I mean, gentlemen,
Gentlemen
of your stature that have been doing this for so long, should I can't. Part of what makes that relationship magic is that perspective, where you guys can suggest things and maybe someone you hadn't never really thought of, or kind of nudge or push people kind of out of their lane. I mean, of course, I love my solids, but
I'm with you, blue and grey, man.
Blue and grey, I'm just right up that alley. But at some point, you've got all those taken care of, and you kind of need a tailor to begin kind of nudging.
We do rein people in sometimes. They can get a bit.
Yeah, I guess it goes both directions, right?
Yeah.
You're right. You've got to sometimes. Is a very old sort of Cockney saying. It's gone from the sublime to the gall-blimey, which is a very old. It's like they go overboard. It's not the Christmas tree bits on it.
Yeah.
It's the fit, isn't it, and the make and the collar. And you can add a bit here or there, as you say, a turn back. And Terry, we do hold them back, and sometimes otherwise they're going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Some of us got everything with a kitchen sink on it, and that doesn't make for good sometimes. I don't think.
Well, and having made for the late Duke, that I'm sure really kind of almost pulls you into the end of the last century, the 19th century, in terms of kind of like, seeing things
sort of
evolve around.
Over,
what has changed? Let's take black tie. Black tie has really been, in so many ways, a constant, right? Because the rules are the rules, because you look so much better. But just looking at that, like through that window, has certain elements of black tie changed over the years that, maybe you guys are able to kind of do differently?
It has changed. Black tie has changed massively, but it's weird you say that. During the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was all very gimmicky, very big shoulders, very fancy facings. Yeah, now it's actually gone back to being very classic. So the black tie now is very classic. This is a perfect example. It's a morning coat there. It's somebody's morning coat, which is very, very old. We're now braiding the edges. We're braiding the cuffs, and we're going to make slips. The white bits that a quarter of an inch will stick out from the edge of the waistcoat. They're called slips. So we're going to put that on.
That is Victorian.
But this, this jacket, this coat goes back. Oh God, many years.
So this is something that a client of yours, I guess, bought vintage, and then you guys
He just wanted to revamp it and make it more relevant and more fashionable. And believe it or not, it's just come back to as it was in the 20s, the full circle.
What about facings? I mean, there's so many options with facings.
Yeah, and again, the facing, this is one we always used to keep, really, John always used to keep this for the Duke of Edinburgh. It's just called a split ottoman facing.
Okay.
It's like a rib, but with a double rib. And then more and more people are going for this type of thing now. They're going for that more
kind of formal, just
I think the satin facings, it's a bit theatrical. If you see those black and white films, you will find most of those dinner jackets had, you know, plain satin. Yeah. We make quite a lot of dress wear, but the thing, what's happened is that when you see these galas and things, the people that are on those may have bought one off the rack. And you'll see 3-button fronts. Basically, what happens is you can't afford when you're selling dinner jackets against suits to buy another machine at £1 million. So you'll see a 3-button front with a silk facing on it. It's basically they've used the same machine and just, you know. So that's not really the type of customer we deal with. You know, as you say, aren't they, Terry? They're pretty traditional.
Just trying to change
and we change bits. I didn't dislike the black tie with it at one point when they never wore a bow. I'm not really sure about that, but you know, it's a younger guy, might want to try something different.
Yeah.
Tommy always did that when I was at Tommy Nutter. He always wore a black tie. He never wore a black bow. If he wore a black bow, it would just be loose.
Well, I think that in some ways it is a little, you know, kind of cutting edge from a fashion perspective to harken back to kind of the older ways of doing things. I mean, fashion, of course, is kind of constantly evolving. Classic menswear less so, but even within, you know, the years of classic menswear, I mean, there's ebbs and flows, lapel widths.
Yes, lapel widths are probably the biggest change.
Yeah,
it's people with dinner suits, they're going for a slightly wider lapel just so they can get that little bit of extra.
If you want to see some special stuff, watch Sunset Boulevard with Gloria Swanson and William Holden, not the new version. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff he wore. He's got a Vicuna overcoat in there with a pleated back on it, like to die for, and a full evening dress as he comes down the staircase. If you just want to see some dresses, I'd love to have met that guy who made those. He's probably
that really was kind of the golden era of menswear.
But that's the best tailcoat, full evening dress I have ever seen. It is unbelievable. I watch it. I must have seen it 30 times, that film, just for that bit.
Just for that bit. I need to have you cut me that exact
we can
replica.
still. Whether that tailor who made it must have been something else. I mean, the cutter was brilliant, but the guy that assembled it, oh boy, and that Vicuna overcoat is unbelievable. It's just how it was. There were so many fabulous tailors, obviously.
But a tailcoat, if it's cut correctly, obviously people are wearing their trousers far too low now. That's what it loses that look. But if you cut very high trousers, very short waistcoat, and keep
with
the
braces
body up. Definitely with braces.
So you can keep it snappy, can't you?
It's probably the most stylish garment there is.
Yes.
Evening towels.
Well, white tie is
you can be a peacock.
the pinnacle.
You can strut around. The wife's got the ball gown, which doesn't happen, and you've got this, and you see them strut, and you would, because they had waistlines where the guys didn't have waistlines, and they were padded out with literally padding to create that, wing pads, all quilted under here. But the overall effect was just amazing. It's just sad that, you know, we have made a couple, haven't we?
We made one for the South American guy who was over here at Buckham.
Correct. That was a beauty. You cut that one. And I cut for Lord, don't mention his other name, that came out really well because he was being presented, wasn't he, and stuff.
Yeah, they've been presented.
Yeah. But it's...
a lot of money.
We love that. I get my teeth in. We can get our teeth in that because we love making suits. But when you get that from a guy who's not got a great figure, but a good figure, and they come out, you know, with a waistline and a bit of skirt and the whole bit.
Well, that's tailoring at its best, right?
Very pleasing.
If you get
very pleasing to say. That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, the black tie, the vintage stuff, you know. I mean, that's really where it gets fun. But what about some more kind of recent pieces? Anything else that you can pull and show us?
Well, we can talk about the one we were talking about earlier on, where we had to change the pockets over.
Okay.
This is really it's going to be a shooting jacket.
Oh, is it?
So it's got the half belt. We're going to put buttons there so he can make it slightly tighter if he's not putting his shooting waistcoat on. And then on the front, we actually started life as 3 patch pockets with an inverted pleat down the middle of them, but he didn't like them, so we changed the pockets round, put this semi-bellows
beautiful
pocket on, and put an outbreast pocket in, but again with the turn-back cuffs, because he loves the turn-back cuffs just to be slightly different. And normal trousers, because a lot of people now using normal trousers for shooting. They're not actually shooting in plus fours so much now. And slightly wider lapel. We go in slightly wider lapel and everything as well now.
It's kind of the way things are going. It's a beautiful kind of Donegal tweed, isn't it?
Very simple.
And that's something that, again, these days, I mean, it may be, a shooting jacket, right? But you could wear it, to lunch. Kind of on the weekend.
That's it. They shoot in a barber or whatever, or and just wear that to lunch. It's makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we do a lot of trousers, as Terry said, and they're making them tighter instead of +2s or 3s, shorter, so they just sit on the shoe. Tapered. We've made quite a lot of shooting trousers, haven't we?
These are shooting trousers.
They're shooting trousers.
Yeah, you showed me these earlier. I mean, this is just
so they become.
Is this thorn-proof fabric? I mean, this is.
Yeah,
really,
it
has to be like, what, 16, 18 ounces?
It's probably a bit, it's probably
even heavier.
18, 18 plus.
With the lap seam down the edge, I mean, again.
It's very traditional.
But it looks good, this gentleman still has +2s and 3s, but he just, had quite a whack of them,
loads of these.
That's beautiful. Gosh. Makes me wish I spent more time shooting here in England.
This is what most people are using for shooting now. So they'll shoot in this during the day. This is nice and wide to keep the cartridges in, and then they'll change, as you said earlier, they'll change into this for lunch.
Yeah.
So it's going to be used more as a sports jacket as well. So you could use this round town.
Yeah.
Rather than just be for shooting only.
Yeah.
I think it's down to, it doesn't come into how much money you've got. It's being practical, just to maybe use that for shooting when technically it's a good sports coat, isn't it? You can put jeans on with that, and I'm into that now. I don't dislike that, providing they're not got holes in. I'm not big on that, but I don't mind them washed out. But you put that on with a pair of chinos or a pair of jeans and a roll neck if it's a bit chilly, or an open neck, button down or something. That way you're using a coat that's expensive, but just not hang it in the wardrobe for 4 times a year that you shoot, which doesn't make sense, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good tailoring, of course, has the longevity, but there should be also, in many ways, a degree of versatility to it.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
Especially,
It's, it's an investment, but, at the same time goes on, where the 60 years of tailoring went from me, I don't know, but it did. But, hang it in the wardrobe. I'll wear that in 2 months' time. That's crazy, because it's, it's tailored by hand. It's tailored for you.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that has changed, which I think is quite nice. That I love a suit, obviously, but to wear a nice sports coat in the week, and a pair of trousers or a blazer, which was never done in Terry's age. I turned up.
Certainly not in London.
I turned up in a blazer on one Friday, and they sent me home because that was Saturday morning, not.
Yes.
And he sent me home, and I never did that again.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't happy, the boss, I've got to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in London.
Left 2 weeks earlier.
And then I left probably a month, wasn't it? I can't remember. Started on my own.
That's funny. Could be. Here in London, more than really anywhere else in the world, our dress codes, really observed. And they're loosening up here, a little bit also.
Oh, it's loosening up big time.
But, in the rest of the world, I mean, like what you said, I mean, you could wear that into the office on a Wednesday in Texas and no one would think anything of it.
I don't, honestly.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I mean, most of our business up until the pandemic was really just blue and grey suits.
Yeah.
That was the core of the business. Even going back to my Tommy Nutter days, people say, it must be fantastic. You do all these amazing garments with all these double, triple tweeds and all that. I said, but 90% of our business is a plain grey or plain blue suit.
Correct.
But since the pandemic, it's changed hugely. If you look around at what we're cutting,
a lot of bundles of
lots of
Prince of Wales
stripes,
and
lots of sports jackets and lots of sportswear. More tweed there, tweed there.
Yeah.
The Fox's Saxony there, and the Laura Piana fabric there. It's all gone very, very casual. The orders we've taken this week, they've all been casual.
Yeah. But still done properly.
I call it casual elegance.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
Indeed.
You've got that on with a lovely button down or a pin-through shirt, and a pair of chinos or something. It's still elegant, in a casual way, if that really matters. That sounds
Yeah.
a bit contradictory, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's good fun. I like it. I love grey. Blue and grey, but sometimes it can get a bit monotonous,
Yeah.
you know. But you get a nice check thrown in, as Terry said, that lovely, or that tweed. It adds for fun. Really.
Yeah, I mean, going back to it, there's a funny, like a weird story, really, going back to the tweeds, because Charlie Watts, as you know, he used to wear lots of tweeds, lots of big, very big tweeds. And I had him in the store once when it was like sort of these tables going down the middle of the store. So I had him there choosing cloth, sort of where you're standing, and right next to him there's the Duke of Kent choosing a plain blue suit. So
Yeah,
one
weird.
of our customers was a banker come in and he said, I think I've seen it all now.
Yeah, that's right.
You got a rock star there next to one of the royal family
Yeah.
next to him.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it's a privilege to be welcomed into the workshop. John,
Lovely to see
thank you so
Keep
much.
up the good work.
Yep.
You look great.
Thanks for
Terry,
coming in
thank
to
you
see
so
us.
much.
It's been lovely to see
And
you.
one of these days, I'll be so honored to, you know.
It'd be a
maybe
pleasure
have
to
you
make for you. I've
something,
got to
yes.
say your tailor is top notch. I'd like to meet him as well, believe me. He looks, he's top notch.
Well, I'll pass on the compliment.
Would you? I would love you to, because Carragini paid me a wonderful compliment and I paid him in those days, and I can say the same. You look fabulous, a fabulous tailor. Fabulous tailor.
Flattered, thank you. Gentlemen, I appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time.